Tonight on The Story, we begin on the reservation of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. For decades, there have been strict limitations on their hunting, fishing right to access their traditional foods. It's our big story tonight. In western Oregon, the Siletz River flows through the heart of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians.
And the name itself is in Tillamook language, and it refers to something that's kind of like coiled up like a rope.
The winding waterway defines the reservation.
The town of Siletz is almost an island because of this big loop that the river takes. Just lots of resources, crawfish.
But for the last 4 decades, accessing those resources hasn't always been easy for the tribe. Just take it from Kevin Goodell.
Well, it's been horrible. Our people, that's what we grew up eating was our indigenous foods.
So we've had a lot of struggles.
The Siletz Reservation first formed in the 1850s.
We're the most diverse confederation of tribes on a single reservation.
By the 1950s, they lost their land under the Congressional Western Oregon Termination Act, part of a U.S. Indian termination policy.
It meant the last bit of our reservation land was sold by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and a small check was received by each tribal member.
The tribe reorganized in the late 1970s. Then, in 1980, in exchange for restoring the Siletz Reservation, the tribe was forced to sign an agreement with the state of Oregon and the federal government, limiting their hunting and fishing rights.
Even though there was lots of pressure, lots of Oregon newspapers had headlines of, if Siletz Tribe is restored, there will be nets across all the rivers and the fish will disappear. Well, that didn't happen.
The restrictions included limited fishing spots and only several hundred deer and salmon tags and just 25 elk tags handed out, lottery style, to about 6,000 tribal members.
It was a very competitive system, not very fair.
Well, it was horrible because, I grew up with my dad who he didn't have any limits, and he would hunt and fish, kind of do what he wanted for himself and the community as hunting and fishing.
The decades-long restrictions forced the tribe to go elsewhere for food.
We have fallen more and more into the Safeway and McDonald's culture of that's where you get your food, and that's unfortunate. It goes against our traditional beliefs.
It means everything. We, I think it's in our DNA, and what we're eating today that you buy in the stores is, I have no clue what it's doing to us.
2 years ago, the tribe and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife entered a new voluntary agreement, giving the tribe the power to manage their own hunting and fishing rules. But that 1980 agreement was still technically on the books.
It felt like it was still hanging out there.
Until late last week, when the state finally repealed it, a move Davia Palmieri at the Department of Fish and Wildlife calls long overdue.
It's been 45 years that the consent decree was restricting the rights of Siletz tribal members to participate in hunting, fishing, trapping, and gathering.
The state's repeal was the final step to officially remove those decades-old restrictions. The federal government had already done their part to leave the agreement in the past.
So it is important to the department and to the state that we can work together with tribal governments to give their members access to those culturally significant resources.
Resources painted on the walls of Siletz Tribal Council.
All the regalia that you see on the people are made from our natural resources around us, and that's part of showing respect for those things and thankfulness.
It's awesome for our people, yeah. It's a big step for us.
Now, the feeling among the tribal members I talked with was relief. Even though for the past 2 years they've been operating under that new agreement with the state, which allows them more freedom when it comes to their hunting and fishing rights. But now that 1980 agreement is gone, they no longer have to worry about those restrictions hanging over their head. Now, this morning, Governor Tina Kotek's office sent me this statement. I want to read part of it here for you. She says, "No tribe should have to choose between their land or their sovereign rights. I applaud the Fish and Wildlife Commission for repealing the 1980 decree that forced the Siletz to lose their rights in exchange for getting their status and land restored." All right, turning now to a look at weather where the heavy rains have turned deadly in southern Oregon. A woman drowned near her home in Central Point, not far from Medford. She was trying to clear branches stuck in a culvert in her driveway when floodwaters pulled her into a nearby creek. So sad. Now, farther north in Douglas County, take a look. Drone video there shows the flooding in the community of Drain. Streets turned into rivers of mud and water. And more drone video there shows debris sliding down. I think there was a tree falling right there onto a highway 138 in the Kellogg Rural Fire District over the weekend. Fire officials there say to expect heavy equipment in that area as cleanup efforts continue. All right, let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino for an update on what to expect tonight, both down south and here in the metro. Matt.
Yeah, Blair, it's been a rough weekend, especially in the central and southern parts of western Oregon, as we just saw. Just amazing amounts of precipitation, which I'll show you. Portland right now, we still have a few showers out there. We had hail downtown. Those hail showers have ended, and we sort of catch a break over the next couple of days, but there's more very active weather coming our way. Now, as far as southern Oregon goes, here's Roseburg, there's Medford and Grants Pass, and Central Point's down by Medford in the Rogue Valley. The only two flood warnings left in the state of Oregon are for the Coquille River, which dumps out into the ocean at Bandon, and then for the Rogue River from Agnes downstream to where it hits the ocean at Gold Beach. There was a flood warning on the Umpqua River near Roseburg. That has been allowed to expire as the waters are receding, as they are in all the rivers. It's going to take a little bit longer on these because they've had so much rain. Now, in northern Oregon, we had all that snow over the weekend in the Cascades. Guess what? There's more on the way. There's a winter weather advisory tonight until tomorrow afternoon for upwards of 8 inches of new snow. But that is followed very quickly by a winter storm watch from Wednesday night into Friday for feet of new snow. And that winter and that winter storm watch extends all the way down to the California border. So again, it's going to be another big week, Blair, of snowfall in the Cascades. So sun breaks tomorrow. Catch a break pretty much all around the state. So breathe easy. Take advantage. Waters will recede. But more rain, more mountain snow Wednesday night, and especially Thursday and Friday when that stronger storm comes in. Good news is, beyond that, it looks like some warm weather for spring break next week, and we might even see 70s here in the Portland area.
Wow, I'm looking forward to that.
Exactly, right? But we got to talk about the rain amounts down south because it's been impressive. Brookings on the southern Oregon coast, nearly 7 inches of rain. Roseburg had 5+ inches of rain. So did Agnes. There's a little place called Flynn Prairie in Curry County. That's that southwesternmost county of Oregon. Up in the Siskiyous, nearly 9 inches of rain there. And Grants Pass down by Medford and Central Point had nearly 5 inches of rain. And then finally, the snowfall. Up at Timberline, it's been about 27 inches new in the last 3 days. That's impressive, right? But wait to see the totals farther south, like around Crater Lake. That's a live shot from Crater Lake. Mount Bachelor in the last week, over 5 feet of snow. Willamette Pass ski area, 52 inches in the last 7 days. I was skiing there this weekend, Blair. There was about 3 feet of new snow just this weekend. Here's video for you from Mount Bachelor, which was enjoying.
It's beautiful.
It was gorgeous. It was.
Oh my God, look at that powder.
I got to tell you, I've been skiing in the Cascades a long time, and the snowfall this weekend was the heaviest, longest duration snowfall that I may have ever seen in the Cascades.
I was going to ask, is this common to have this much new snow in March?
You know, March is a big snow month for us. Our snowpack doesn't usually peak until the 1st of April. But even if this happened in December or January, this would still be really impressive. And in March, I wouldn't call it unusual, but it's not really the norm either. Look at Crater Lake. They've had 48 inches in the last 5 days there. The good news is the snowpack from Crater Lake to Mount Hood, all above average. They're running about 164% of average, Blair, down at Crater Lake. And we're running on Mount Hood somewhere around 130% of average. So we're doing well.
Okay, good skiing. So we can still ski even though spring is on its way.
Oh, skiing will be happening well into April, if not May. In Timberline, of course, even longer. And then, of course, the other great thing about this, Blair, is the fact that it really helps our water supply as we go through spring and into summer. So that's really the good news there.
Really great point. All right, Matt, thanks so much.
You bet.
Okay, now let's get to some of your thoughts on our big story from late last week, the momnibus bills in Salem this session. We honed in on Senate Bill 1167, which would fund 7 early childhood hubs around the state for new parents and their kids to get help with the things they need. It's been coined the Child Success Act. Now, one of the bill's champions is former Oregon Governor John Kitzhaber. The idea is to address a family's needs when a baby is young to try and prevent problems later in life, like homelessness and addiction. Now, these hubs would offer all kinds of support, everything from mental health to cash assistance and expanding access to housing and childcare. They're asking for $12 million from the state general fund to get the hubs up and running for the next 2 years. Each of the hubs will be required to track how that money is used and demonstrate with data how effective it's been. Now, after talking about that bill, we had a live interview with Senator Lisa Reynolds, who is helping lead the charge on a host of momnibus bills, hoping to help babies and their families. Now, when it comes to your thoughts, a slight majority of you agreed with a viewer named Mark, who wrote, "Okay, sounds like a large umbrella black hole," all in caps there, "of services and expenses." 3 exclamation points. In the end, it sounds like more social workers are needed to help struggling families connect with existing services may/will be the result, all with the help babies rap/justification for spending more. And Bill wrote to us, "The program sounds great as a provisional trial. However, there seems to be no limit to the request for funds to cover existing and new programs." But Louise chimed in, supporting the legislation, writing, "Our society has not provided support for young families and quality education for our youth for years and years. I'm hopeful that Kitzhaber and legislators here in Oregon will finally address the core reasons for society's problems. It starts with taking care of kids and giving them a good education." And we'll end on this one from Nadia, who wrote, "Helping families at the front end benefits everyone down the line. But until we start working on changing our why should I be responsible for others culture, we'll still be trying to convince the haves that helping the have-nots is not only good for them, but necessary for our society to thrive." All right, coming up next on The Story, we kick off a week-long series of stories on a topic that affects women all across the country: chemical hair relaxers and their risk of causing cancer. Thousands of women have sued. We dive into the scientific studies and what some beauty companies have to say about it after the break. And later, we take you into the KGW vault for a trip back to 1977 and the St. Patrick's Day parade here in Portland. All the sights and sounds of years past. That's when The Story returns. Well, now to a series we're featuring all this week called Damage Control. Thousands of women are suing companies that make and market chemical hair relaxers, claiming the products led to cancer. In part one tonight, investigative reporter Morgan Young walks us through the scientific studies that sounded the alarm and why one major beauty brand says it's not to blame.
In October of 2022, the National Institute of Health published this research called the Sister Study. Researchers follow nearly 34,000 women of different races for almost 11 years. They found that women who used chemical hair relaxers more than 4 times per year were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer than women who never used them. Critics complained the women weren't studied long enough and researchers weren't specific about which products are in question. But another group was also paying attention.
Seeing that paper and their results did really spark us to look at this more closely in our population.
Dr. Kimberly Bertrand is an epidemiologist at Boston University School of Medicine. She is also the co-researcher for the Black Women's Health Study. Bertrand's team studied almost 45,000 women, exclusively Black women, for more than 20 years, twice as long as that first study.
We wanted to understand whether women who had a history of using chemical hair relaxers had a higher risk of developing uterine cancer compared to women who didn't.
Uterine cancer disproportionately impacts Black women, and the purpose of this study and others like it is to help determine why.
One of those exposures potentially is chemical hair relaxers because these are products that are heavily marketed to Black women.
How would you explain what you found?
Among postmenopausal women, those who used chemical hair relaxers for many, many years or many times per year had about a 60% increased risk of developing uterine cancer compared to those who never used chemical hair relaxers or who used them only occasionally.
Their findings were published in October of 2023, nearly a year after the Sister Study was published. But Bertrand says the question at hand was not new.
As early as 1997 is when we first started asking about women's experience with using chemical hair relaxers. Even at that time, it was very clear that there are potential toxic chemicals included in these types of products.
Chemicals like parabens and phthalates, which are considered to be endocrine disruptors, meaning they can interfere with hormones, potentially leading to health problems.
We've published and found associations between use of chemical hair relaxers and uterine fibroids. We've seen modest associations for breast cancer.
Another major criticism of these studies is that they don't specifically name an ingredient in hair relaxer products that are in question. But Bertrand says there is a reason for that.
Women don't always know what's in these products. They're minimally regulated by the FDA. On the ingredient label, it may just say fragrance or preservative, and you don't necessarily know what you're being exposed to.
While different relaxers have different ingredients, nearly all of them include fragrance or parfum, which have their own ingredients that the FDA does not require manufacturers to list. And many studies have already found fragrance to be an endocrine disruptor.
So I think women have a right to know what they're exposed to and whether there's potential toxicity to the chemicals they're exposed to.
And as women started to hear about the science, they also started to sue.
We immediately started looking into it.
Brooke Cohen is a partner with Cohen Hirsch, a law firm with offices in Dallas and Atlanta that is representing about 100 women who are currently suing hair relaxer companies.
Anytime there's a product that harms women, it's something that we think is so important to get behind because there has to be change.
The firm is one of many with cases all over the country. In February of 2023, just months after that initial Sister Study, what's called a multi-district litigation, or MDL, was formed in a federal court in Illinois to handle the more than 50 lawsuits that had been filed at that time.
If a person went up against Revlon or L'Oreal on their own, it would be so prohibitively expensive for that person that they would not be able to probably win. It's a David and Goliath situation, really. So in an MDL, all of the discovery, the fact-finding, the evidence is shared across the plaintiffs across the nation, and those costs are shared.
At the end of February of this year, 2 years after the MDL was formed, there have been more than 9,800 cases filed. There are a number of hair relaxer companies and manufacturers listed as defendants in these cases, but the biggest one is L'Oreal. The company distributes both at-home relaxer products and professional-grade products for stylists under its Soft Sheen Carson brand. In a statement, the company said in part, "Our highest priority is the health and well-being of all our customers. Our products are subject to a rigorous scientific evaluation of their safety by experts who also ensure that we strictly follow all regulations in every market in which we operate." It goes on to say, "While we understand the desire of each plaintiff to find answers to and relief from their personal health concerns, we are confident in the safety of Soft Sheen Carson's products and believe the allegations made in these lawsuits have neither legal nor scientific merit." It also points out the initial sister study stated there would need to be further research to actually determine whether products cause the conditions in question.
There are also limitations to epidemiologic studies. That's maybe what the manufacturers in these lawsuits are sort of hanging on. The biggest thing that could be done immediately is like transparency on like ingredient labels, manufacturers being required to actually list what the ingredients are, and then women will know, what they're being exposed to.
That was Morgan Young reporting. Now, tomorrow night in our damage control series, we look at the current timeline on a potential FDA ban on formaldehyde in certain beauty products. It's something that's been delayed several times, but could take the next step forward this month. Well, coming up next on the story, a trip into the KGW vault on this St. Patrick's Day. How did Portland's parade look back in the late 70s? We tracked down a news story from way back when, and we'll play it for you when the story returns. Well, the KGW Great Food Drive is going on right now, and we need your help to meet our goal of more than 1 million meals. So far, we've collected enough donations for about 500,000 meals for our community, but we're not done yet, and it's easy to give. Just go to kgw.com/food drive. Plus, all this week, Toyota will match the first $10,000 donated. We want to thank local Toyota dealers, Pacific Office Automation, Rivermark Community Credit Union, and Safeway for supporting this year's food drive. All right, well, of course, today is St. Patrick's Day, and on holidays like this, you know the drill, we like to head down to the KGW Vault to see how news crews of decades past covered events at the time. We found a good one from nearly 50 years ago. Dom Porter helps narrate the sights and sounds of the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Portland back in 1977.
For true Irishmen and women, every day is St. Patrick's Day in Oregon, where it's green all year round. Portland's All-Ireland Social Club sent out the call for all Irishmen to march in today's parade, so march they did. The Irish U.S. Navy, the Irish Clackamas County Volunteer Fire Department, good old Irish Model Ts, the Irish U.S. Army Band playing that well-known Irish ditty, Baby Elephant Walk, the Irish Portland Timber soccer team, who at least had the color right, a celebration of familiar Irish pastimes. Here's an Irish old-timer with his Irish beastie, an Irish taxi cab, and a very Irish shillelagh. Bringing up the rear, an Irish Portland traffic jam. Everyone's an Irishman on St. Patrick's Day, so this is Irish Don O'Porter, Channel 8 News, here in County Multnomah.
So cool to see. All right, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Straight Talk is coming your way next, and don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. And if you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air the episode at 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. on our TV app, KGW Plus, which you can download for free right now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.